Welcome back, everyone. I'm Zell, and today we're going to take apart the Ferrum Forge Falcon. This is that knife that was facilitated by Mass Drop, designed by Ferrum Forge, and made by we for you. I know everybody's involved in this one, but if you have one of these knives, Mass Drop is the person or the people to go to if you have problems. It's unfortunately not we and not Ferrum Forge. Mass Drop is supposed to be handling that, and from what I understand, from what people tell me, they are doing a good job of it. But anyhow, let's get this guy apart and see just exactly what we've got. You know, I can suspect that I know what we've got in there. So we got T6 back here, and this is a knife sent by Tony, our good buddy Tony, and we're going to get it apart for him. We're going to vibratite this guy up, and on this one, we're actually going to take the entire knife apart because I want to look under this pocket clip. I want you guys, whenever we get a little further here, I want you guys to see what we're dealing with there and what people are talking about with that pocket clip. Do we have... I don't believe that. My God. Oh, no. We're okay. I just need to find another T8. You would think that some guy that was going to take this knife apart on camera would have figured that out already, wouldn't you? Well, not what you always get here. So what we do end up with, and well, we'll just talk about it here in a minute. Let's see if this thing's going to come apart nice and easy. There goes the phone, but we don't care. Ease this thing apart, and there we go. So we'll get into this a little bit at a time. First up, we are just a standard slab side piece of titanium, well cut, nicely chamfered everywhere, and we have the Ferrum Forge Designs logo right there. And man, this thing's dirty. We'll have to clean it up. Between me and Stazza, we got it all dirty for Tony, but we'll get it cleaned up, get it back to him. We have a standard Wii-style lock bar insert, and since this one's been apart a few times, we'll go ahead and pull that guy out if we can. We need a T6 for that little guy, and we will get that guy apart. And somebody's talking on my answering machine. We don't care. But that's what I have talked about with we and some of the other companies now. Many of the other companies. They are really getting these lock bar inserts in there super tight. Wipe that out a little bit. This knife did have some problems. I don't remember exactly what they were. Stazza told me, but you know, I'm not got a great memory for that kind of stuff. I believe it was some kind of lock rock issue, which he did fix by adjusting the lock bar tension. If you ever go to adjust lock bar tension, it's not a hard thing to do, but it's an easy thing to mess up on. Because what you're doing is you put the bottom side of the frame in a vise, is the right way to do it, and then you very gingerly start pushing this over from all the way out here at the end somewhere, very gingerly. Because you can get the titanium to bend, but the problem is if you get it too far and you get it too tight, once you start bending it back and forth, it'll fatigue. Same thing with stainless steel, and you'll end up with a broken lock bar. That we don't want. Anyhow, pulled that guy out, and that's what one of those little inserts looks like. Got a ceramic ball bearing in it. That one's setting fairly proud, which makes for a great detent. And you know, that's all there is to it. It's just a little piece of hardened steel that sits in there behind the titanium. And let's see what we've got here. We've got standard Wii bearings. I bet if I took another Wii knife apart and stuck the bearings out of that in there, that we would have exactly the same stuff. And we do have an internal stop pin. Very nice, nicely cut, of course. You know, we're dealing with Wii's stuff here. And I know there have been some issues with this knife, but, you know, they do just a really good job almost always with their knives. Whether they're making them for themselves or making them for somebody else. Doesn't seem to matter. They seem to do just a really nice job. And that is convenient, having that little magnetic. This is an Irwin bit that you can pick up at Lowe's, maybe even Home Depot. But I know for sure at Lowe's. And it's magnetic. It's their Impact T6. Don't ever stick a T6 in an Impact. But it is what they call an Impact T6. And it's because of it being magnetic, it's really neat. I'm going to get this guy cleaned up some because that dude was just gross. Either me or Staz is gross. Probably me. Because I have carried this knife some, and I apologize, Tony. I didn't think we got it that dirty. Okay, so I've wiped everything down pretty good. We need to... I've got two knives apart here, waiting on some stuff to dry for one. I need to make sure we keep our parts together. Get that all wiped down. All right, I think we're ready to... What do we have here? So we need to pull out that T6, because I said I was going to vibratite the whole thing for Tony, and that's not a T6. It's not a T8 either. What do we have here? We may have a bad screw there. Seeing as how this is not my knife, I'm going to give it one more shot. And I probably do have a T7 laying around here somewhere. We'll try that. That would be odd. But no, it is not a T7. So it is a T6. Okay, there it came. So, whenever we do the review, I'll of course go through. These screws seem to have been pretty good, but that one was a bit iffy. But there's our backspacer. It's got a pin in it right here. That's a free pin that goes... where did it go? My goodness. Here we go. The pin goes right there in that hole, and the sleeve goes up in this hole. So I'm going to finish cleaning this up, and then we will put it all back together, or we'll vibratite it. And then while it's vibratating, or while it's curing, I'll go back to the other knife I had apart, which was the quiet carry. We'll get that quiet carry put back together. That's another one. That one's on loan from Nick, and it's, I don't know, it's a neat knife, and it may fit some of you really, really well. I, however, for my own use, was not too impressed, and hopefully we can straighten a couple things out whenever we put it back together. But anyhow, here we go. We'll get it all cleaned up. Looks like Nick used just a little bit. It looks like industrial Loctite whenever he put it back together. That's the, sometimes it's green, white stuff. And that's fine. If he's got a hold of that stuff, that's good stuff. But we're going to use Vibratite. So let's grab a hold of all these screws, get some Vibratite on them. And get this knife set aside so we can get back to that other one, or I can get back to that other one. You guys will see it all in one video because, well, that's how you do things. Each knife in one video instead of back and forth. That stuff is sticky. Really sticky. That would not work as a lubricant. You get your stuff stuck. And I talked about this in the quiet carry video. This stuff works more like a gummy rubbery substance between your threads. And what it does is it absorbs shock. If you take your knife and you flip it open, you're creating shock throughout that knife. Every screw is getting a little bit of shock because every bit of that blade speed is getting transferred to that blade stop. There's a little stop pin in there, and And my knife's dirty, isn't it? I should probably clean that guy up. It hadn't been apart for a long time, though. And what the Vibratite does is absorbs that shock so that the screws stay in place. And the reason I use the Vibratite is because all of your other thread lockers that I'm aware of don't. They dry hard, more like a glue. And whenever they dry hard like that, then whenever they take so many rounds of shock, and they just break loose. And there have been knives in the past where I've experienced that, and I was Loctiting them once every 2 or 3 weeks and stuff. And this Vibratite stuff seems to have taken that away. Occasionally I'll have to tighten up a knife, but I rarely have to reapply the Vibratite or any other thread locker. And it allows you to take the knife apart and put it back together 2 or 3 times, which is really cool. Anyhow, as you know, we got 30 minutes to let this stuff dry, and I'll be back with you instantly. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, the Ferrum Forge Falcon has had time for the Vibratite to cure, and before we start putting it together, I want to talk about this for just a moment. You see how thin that gets? There have been reports of that snapping off, and it's thin. We'll get a measurement on it just for fun. At its thinnest point there, we're looking at 0.031. 0.8 millimeters. Now, to put 0.031 in perspective, whenever I grind up a large knife, something that's going to be used to beat, hack, do those sorts of things, that's my target for blade thickness. 0.031. And that is pretty freaking thin. 0.030 actually, but that is pretty freaking thin because even whenever I do a chopping style blade, I try to keep it really thin. So that's thin, and maybe they should have thickened it up a little bit. Anyhow, let's go and get this guy back together. Got our pivot in there. We'll get the 10-weight nano oil out, and we'll put just a couple of drops around the pivot. Probably not necessary, but I'm going to do it anyhow. And then we want one of our hardened steel washers, and I would suggest that you get a good look at the washer and stick in the side stick the side up that already has the bearing race starting to be worn into it. And we have some parts there trying to take off, and oil up our little bearing. And we have the pockets in the handle scales, so we're going to leave the closed side of the bearing up. And we need to stick the stop pin in if I don't throw it off on the floor somewhere, because we have the internal stop pin on this guy. There we go. We'll set that aside for just a moment because we have to put our lock bar insert back in this guy. And oh, whew, fell right in there. That's awesome. Sometimes on knives that We Knife Company makes, those can be a real pain in the rear to get back in there because the tolerances that they use for those lock bars inserts can be super, super tight. Alright, get that guy down good and snug. And now we can go back to putting this guy together. So, once again, put just a little oil in there. Put the closed side of the bearing towards the blade. Put our washer right there. And is there anything else that needs to get up? This needs to go inside the knife. Put our pin right here. Make sure it's seated, and we've got our sleeve right there. I think, well, we almost forgot. You guys would have bit me on that one. Fussed at me for a week. Put our 85 weight down in our pivot hole. There we go. Might have got a bit much in there, but I bet it'll be okay. And I've said this many times now, but I do this. Put the 85 weight down in the, I said pivot hole. It's in the detent hole. So that detent ball can grab just a little bit of that 85 weight for the next several times it's opened and closed, and just pick a little bit up and spread it around the detent path instead of trying to oil the detent path itself. Just let the ball do it. Alright, so this guy open. Once again, man, I've been getting lucky. That guy just fell right down on there. So let's get the T8 back in here. Alright, remember that thing is a free spinner. It's got torque screw on either side, so we're going to go ahead and put together some more of this. I believe that screw went there. Nope. That screw did not go there. The two longer screws. I think I put them in the wrong hole. I did. One of the advantages of Vibratite, whenever you goof up like that, you can pull it back out. And try again. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but the old dog is having a little puppy nightmare over there. That would be Ty. He spends a lot of time sleeping anymore. I think he's close to an 8-year-old boxer. And for boxers, that's into grandpa stage, that's for sure. So he spends a lot of time watching over the girls, shaking his head at them. And that's really about it. Let's see, we got back to our T8 because we got to tighten that pivot up. And yeah, don't do this at home, boys and girls. Put it in a vise. That way you're not flicking things around on the table like this. Or find somebody to hold it for you. And we're tight now. A bit over tight. See if we're going to need them both to... There we go. Back to center. Let's see if we got any of that blade play. Uh-oh. That's not good. And I'm going to have to take it apart again and adjust that lock bar. I'll come back after I'm done with that. Or maybe whenever I've got it all apart again, we'll give you a little tutorial on that. Alright, so the lock bar in this thing apparently is going to be a problem. Did the same thing to Staza. So I don't have a vise here, so this is how I'm going to do this, and you should use a vise. Put the lower side of the frame in a vise, and then start doing this very easily. Don't go at it hard, just real easily. If you go at it hard, you end up bending the titanium, fatiguing it, and it becomes a problem. I probably should have checked depth before I did any of that, because it would have been a good idea to pick a spot and check your depth right there. 0.0845, and that way you can tell if you've done any good or when you have done some good doing this. Titanium's pretty springy, but you don't want to actually bend it all at once. You know, I know they do that in the factory, but I have had issues with trying to do that. All right, so we just about got it back together again, and I think we have cured it by putting a little more pressure on that lock bar. Find out here in just a moment. There we get everything back in the knife. All right, so we've taken care of the lockup issue. Everything looks pretty good, still well centered. And guys, that's what's inside the Ferrum Forge Falcon from Massdrop and and the whole mess that made it. And you guys have a great day. I hope you found this interesting, and I'll see you next time.